Today, we are exploring a powerful message from the Ashtar command centered on one very specific point. They can no longer delay disclosure. For a long time, this revelation has been contained, postponed, slowed down, and surrounded by caution. That phase is reaching its limit. Something has changed on Earth, and that change is now affecting everything that comes next. The question is no longer whether the truth will emerge. The real question is how it will now begin taking its place within human reality. Ashtar explains that the main obstacle was never the absence of extraterrestrial presence around Earth. The obstacle was the control of information. Powerful groups understood that full disclosure would open files they had worked hard to keep closed. This includes previous contact, hidden agreements, suppressed technologies, and parts of human history that were never fully revealed. As long as that system remained stable, delay was still possible. That ability to block the process is now weakening. This moment matters because the argument used for years is losing its power. Humanity was repeatedly described as unprepared, with the claim that people would react with fear, confusion, social disorder, and rejection. According to Ashtar, that description no longer reflects the real state of collective consciousness. More people already sense that the official story does not explain everything, and they understand that reality extends beyond what has been publicly acknowledged. The possibility of extraterrestrial life no longer creates the same psychological shock it once did, and this inner opening is now affecting the timing of disclosure itself. This is why cosmic allies have worked through gradual stages. Ashtar speaks of several benevolent civilizations participating in the transition, including the Aldebarans, helping prepare the conditions carefully. The goal has been to observe humanity's response and create a stable path toward recognition. Limited appearances were allowed and brief manifestations took place, giving these groups a way to measure how people reacted when confronted with unusual activity in the skies. According to the message, the results were significant. The public showed far more calm than expected. Curiosity became stronger, interest grew, and people began questioning what they were seeing without immediately falling into panic. Skepticism and denial still exist, yet the deeper collective response has shifted. That shift matters because it shows that humanity has crossed an important threshold. Ashtar explains that collective consciousness has reached a level of maturity that makes the old strategy of endless delay increasingly unstable. This changes the entire disclosure process. Disclosure no longer depends entirely on one official announcement coming from governments or major institutions. It begins moving through several channels at once as visibility in the skies increases, public discussion expands, and resistance inside institutions begins weakening. People who once dismissed the subject start looking at it differently, and recognition begins entering the collective field before formal confirmation arrives. This is where the role of the fleets becomes much more important. Ashtar describes a gradual increase in visibility where smaller appearances prepare human perception and more noticeable manifestations increase awareness. Each stage builds familiarity. The process remains carefully controlled because larger fleet activity affects more than human psychology. According to the transmission, Earth has magnetic and biological systems that must also be respected, so large-scale appearances require precision. The intention is to create recognition while keeping the transition stable. As this continues, a critical point is eventually reached. The extraterrestrial presence can no longer remain confined to isolated sightings or private testimony because the pattern becomes too consistent and too widely recognized. The subject moves from the margins into normal public conversation, and governments then face a completely different situation. They are no longer deciding whether humanity should know. They are responding to a reality humanity has already begun recognizing. This is why Ashtar says the delay mechanism is losing control. The deeper problem for those resisting disclosure is that the revelation extends far beyond admitting that extraterrestrial civilizations exist. Full disclosure opens much larger questions about the true chronology of Earth, knowledge that has been withheld, hidden technologies, and previous contact with non-human civilizations. It also forces humanity to examine the role certain groups played in shaping events behind the scenes. According to Ashtar, some of the strongest resistance comes from this deeper layer. The presence of extraterrestrial life is only the first door. What lies behind that door has consequences for every major area of society and our understanding of human history. This is why the process has been delayed for so long. Once these revelations begin connecting with each other, entire systems of control lose their foundation, and institutions built around limited information are forced to adapt. Ashtar also explains that part of this work is already happening outside ordinary public awareness. Meetings are taking place, representatives are communicating, and Earth-based allies are involved in discussions about how disclosure should unfold and how much information can be released at each stage. The process remains demanding because resistance continues. There are still forces trying to distort information and create confusion around the subject, which is why some details remain protected and certain parts of the plan are revealed gradually. Ashtar also states that a small number of leaders are already moving closer toward open acknowledgement. Behind closed doors, positions are changing and conversations are taking place. Some officials understand that complete silence cannot continue forever, even though their hesitation remains connected to the political and social consequences of revelation. The message is clear that if official institutions refuse to move forward, reality itself will increase the pressure. More visible appearances will take place, public awareness will continue expanding, and the evidence will become harder to ignore. At that point, acknowledgement becomes less about choosing the right moment and more about responding to something already unfolding in front of the world. This is the direction the Ashtar material points toward: greater normalization of the extraterrestrial subject, increasing visibility, growing public recognition, weakening institutional resistance, and eventually official acknowledgement, followed by deeper layers of disclosure. Open contact comes later, once humanity has moved far enough through this adjustment. That is why the current phase is so important. Humanity is approaching the point where disclosure stops being controlled entirely from above. Collective consciousness itself becomes part of the force moving the process forward, and once enough people are ready to accept a larger reality, the old gatekeeping system begins losing its ability to define what humanity is allowed to know. From Ashtar's perspective, this transition ultimately changes how humanity understands itself. We begin moving beyond the idea that Earth is an isolated civilization and start recognizing ourselves as part of a much larger inhabited cosmos. That realization changes how we understand our origins, our relationship with consciousness, and the future of civilization. This is why disclosure and spiritual awakening remain so closely connected within the message. The outer revelation reflects an inner expansion that has already begun. The message today is very clear. Disclosure is no longer sitting in a frozen state of waiting. It has entered a phase of approach. Resistance and delays still exist, but their power is weakening as humanity moves further into this transition. The collective consciousness has crossed a threshold, and that threshold is changing the balance. The truth can still be slowed down for a time, but it can no longer be contained indefinitely. That is why Ashtar says they can no longer delay disclosure. If you want to hear the full original transmission, you can find it on Patreon through the link in the description. Thank you for listening to this message. If you feel the need to stabilize your field and establish clear protection during this phase of acceleration, the Arcturian Light Shield activation is available in the description. It includes the guide, the symbols, and the Arcturian mantra in light language. You will now hear a short excerpt of the mantra so you can feel its frequency. See you very soon.
Om Tore Shanuvel Kritamena Ishareno Kalim Tora Eshun Vaishena Toria Tore Shanuvel Kritamena Ishareno Kalim